today I thought we could do just something a little bit cozy, snuggle up in a cardigan and do something incredibly 2006, but then at the same time, am I not incredibly 2006, and do a reading tag. So this is the reading habits tag, and I thought it would just be a nice little cozy short video where we can chat about reading habits. I want to hear yours below. Definitely during and after the pandemic, my reading habits have changed because my life has changed, and it's always been that way. I guess my reading habits are always changing, but here they are, and at how they are now. Here they. What is the point in all this reading if I can't construct a sentence properly? Anyway, so the first one is, do you have a certain place at home for reading? Because we live in a rented flat that we haven't really bothered to customize or decorate, to be honest, because I don't really know how long we're going to live now. Story altogether. Anyway, there's just like one like reading light that isn't by our bed, that is in this really cozy corner of the room, and it's an armchair and I sit in it. It's basically really, in realistic practice, the only place that I read because it's near the reading light, and my eyes are quite sensitive and I really genuinely need the page to be lit properly. It's an incredibly boring answer, so let's hope the second one is I have better things to say. Bookmark or random piece of paper? Oh my gosh. Bookmarks are probably one of the most underutilized parts of my life, and I can't honestly ever put my hand on my heart and say I've bought a bookmark off my own back. They're always like gifts that are given in goodie bags. If you work in publishing, you like have bookmarks coming out of your ears. They're just part of the peripheral faff that happens around a book, and I love them. I love receiving them, I love owning them. I have a little section on my bookshelf where I shove them all, but do I ever get them out and use them? The answer is no. I dog ear, I pull receipts that I probably should have filed for tax instead of using as a bookmark. Back when I used to get trains more regularly, train tickets, anything really, sweet wrappers, Starburst wrappers, they actually work quite well, but I have to confess that it's always just what's near me because I don't tend to like plan in my reading time, and I'm quite a chaotic person in general, so no regrets. I don't think it's one of my worst failings, and I think the effort required to correct that habit in myself just wouldn't be worth the payoff, so that's what I do, no regrets. Number 3, can you just stop reading, or do you have to stop after a chapter a certain amount of pages? No, I can stop anywhere purely through necessity. A lot of my reading habits were picked up when I was like working bar work jobs when nobody was around and I was reading, or receptionist jobs. When I was a receptionist, I read the entirety of the Twilight series while being paid, albeit £3.83 an hour, but I was being paid. So you like, the way I've learnt to read is to always be interrupted, and like on buses and stuff like that. So that's not a problem for me. It's sometimes a bit annoying when you're at the end of a book and you can't get back into the emotions. Like sometimes I have to go back a few pages to return, but it's not a problem for me. My brain can pick it up. It's fine, it's good. Number 4, do you eat or drink while reading? All the time. Eating's kind of distracting, to be honest, because I really like food. So while I like eating while reading, I often find that both pleasures are diminished because I'm distracted by 2 of the best things in my life. But I'm always like sipping tea or hot chocolate or that kind of thing. I think that's fine. Opposite to that, the next question, multitasking. Do you do music or TV while reading? Unacceptable. I can't even abide like a sound. Like Craig will tell you this, like I for some reason I'm very sensitive to noise, and anything that's going on in the background, even if it's like something like a charger's buzzing or something, I'm like, oh, I can't, like, oh. I mean, I don't mind washing machines, stuff like that's fine, but I really can't listen to music while reading. And sometimes I listen to music while writing, but it has to be a really specific album or playlist that I already know really well. I can't be listening to new stuff. I genuinely don't understand people who can watch TV and read at the same, like, I can't, like, I admire it. I don't judge it, I aspire to it, but there's just no way. I have to be in the zone. Although weirdly I can read on public transport anywhere, and also sleep anywhere. So explain that one. There's no point. Anyway, next one. Number 6, one book at a time or several at once. I don't want to say I've been bad at this, but like I always have at least 6 books on the go. And in my defense, before you think that I'm mistreating my reading practices or something, when it comes to people, I think it's so much better if you give your attention to one person at a time, especially if you're in a conversation or something. I understand the emotional need for focus, but when it comes to books, inanimate objects, albeit written by real people. I think that they're trying to impart something on you, they're trying to tell you a story, but there is no time limit. They're not actually there in the room waiting for you to give them attention, and I think sometimes you can do a disservice to a book by rushing through it to get to the next one, or especially if it's a non-fiction book and it's about something you're actually like, it's important that you learn about. When I was reading How to Be an Anti-Racist, that book took me a long time to get through because I was like listening to a few hours of it and then going back to all the bookmarks that I bookmarked and actually typing up, like either typing out exactly what he'd said so I could learn it better, or like trying to type out a summary of what he was saying so that I knew that I was learning it. And I think in the same way, like you have a class for like a module like once a week or once a fortnight, there's a reason for that. There's a reason that they don't give you just a week's worth chunk of it at a time. So I'm very passionate about reading more books than one, and sometimes especially with like fiction, there's been times when I know the book isn't bad, but I am just reacting to it really badly because I'm in like a bad mood, or I'm in the wrong place to sympathise with that character or be interested in that setting. And I think that that's how a lot of bad reviews happen on good books, is that people force themselves to read books they're not in the mood for or that aren't for them. So I'm a big fan of like a huge currently reading list. I don't think it's a bad thing, and maybe that's also like because I used to just like as a kid and a teenager like go to the library a lot. I'd always get out the maximum amount of books and then try and get through as many of them as possible. So I was just like always maxing out my library card, and just like the idea of having a lot of books on the go was like practical for that reason. So I guess I'm just used to it. Number 7, reading at... Oh, also I wanted to say, I was thinking about this the other day because I've had to pause reading a book that I was really enjoying called Here I Am by Jonathan Safran Foer, which is one that one of you guys recommended to me, and it's really long, but it's really good. But I have to read some other books for work, and every time I come back to it, it's sometimes been a couple of days or maybe even a week, and I've always been able to pick up like exactly where I'd left off because the world is so vivid and because he's really like instilled the characters in me. It's easy to return to. So I think if it's really hard to return to a book, it's probably not a very good book. Like it does actually depend on the kind of book you're returning to and the kind of effectiveness of the writing. Anyway, that was an unnecessary, uncalled for side note to a very simple question. Number 7, read at home or everywhere. Out of necessity, read everywhere. Never without a book. Before the pandemic was mainly most of my reading life happened on public transport. When people were like, how do you read so many books a year? I'm like, well, I had a 45 minute to an hour commute every day, even though I lived in... shouldn't have taken that long to get to work, considering the rent I was paying and how close I was to the actual... Anyway, whatever. If you live in London, it's probably going to be a 45 minute to an hour commute each way a day. So that's 10 hours a week. So I did a lot of it on there, and I also listened to a lot of audiobooks and walked places. But since the pandemic, I've gone back to some stagnant reading. I've been just sitting in an armchair reading, and I love it, and there's no regrets there. It's just really different now, I guess, but I prefer both. And I really like, if the train is a good train, very stable, then I can read on trains. That's very exciting to me. One of the great injustices of my childhood was that my brother can read in cars, and I just like throw up if I try and read in a car. Apart from he didn't really like reading and didn't really use his power and I was sitting there like fuming. Anyway, not the point. Reading out loud or silently in your head. Obviously silently in your head. I read a lot faster that way, and you can kind of do the voices of characters without like sounding silly. But I do think there's a place for reading out loud, and I enjoy it as like a kind of meditative practice. I used to do it when I wanted to get into drama school, and like I was just like practicing reading stuff aloud. They say it's a really good thing just to like read books aloud if you're trying to like learn how to perform and learn how to like read and speak at the same time. So I used to do it a lot, and I also was in an audiobook once. I'll leave the link below. It's on Audible and everywhere and everything, but I was one of the readers in an audiobook, and that was like one of the best experiences of my life. Please, can somebody else let me voice an audiobook, because it was like sitting in a warm room with a really friendly man and just calmly read, and it was like really dark, and there was like just a light on the page, and it's just a great experience. I think you should read aloud to yourself if you're stressed. It's really good, but in reality I read in my head. How is this taking me like so long to answer all the questions? Like get a grip, Lena, like drop. We don't need all the opinions. Number 9, do you read ahead or even skip pages? Not unless I am reading for a job And a lot of my reading in my 20s was dictated by my job, because I had to read. Like, there's a wild thing in publishing where you're expected to do all of this reading, but like you can't do it during your work hours. It's just a really normal overtime, like probably, if we really looked into employment law, slightly dodgy fact of being in the publishing industry, but that's a different story for another day. When I was reading for work, sometimes I would have to skip just because I'd have like 24 hours warning before I was interviewing an author, or if I was reading like a lot of books at a time, or if editorial had sent us like a manuscript and we just had to give like our top line thoughts on whether it was good enough to publish, or if it like where it would work in the market. Especially if it's non-fiction, you can just read a few paragraphs or read a few chapters to get a sense of the style of writing and if it's good enough, and if it's like, I don't know, what kind of tone. Is it a casual, like mass market book, or is it something that's quite niche and academic? Again, why such a long answer? Sometimes I read ahead, but I try not to read ahead if it's like a fiction book and I don't want to know the end, obviously. But yeah, it depends. Sometimes when I realise I'm reading a book that I don't really trust the author's writing on, sometimes I will skip a few pages because I can tell there's nothing that important on those pages. But that's the issue with the book, I think. The best books, you won't need to skip pages. You won't want to read ahead. Anyway, number 10, breaking the spine or keeping it like new. Break the spine, like why? Although my friend Sana has a really great Instagram reel about how to not break the spine on your big paperbacks, but it's fine to break the spine. I like it, it's like bubble wrap, and yeah, fight me basically. I quite like a broken spine, it's fine by me. Number 11, do you write in your books? Yeah, I do. But again, this is a like do as you would be done by moment, where it's like, I really like buying books from charity shops or inheriting books from other friends and people and them having underlined stuff in it. I think it's really cool. The anthropological style of, what do we call it, marginalia and stuff, I really like it. There's some books that are written like that, I can't remember the name of it now, S or something. There's books that are written through the medium of marginalia. It's like a legit thing that people study, and I think it's really interesting and cool. And I also find it really useful if I'm keeping the book and I'm not passing it on, because I think I would enjoy it, so I don't mind doing a little bit of marginalia and underlining and stuff. But if I'm not passing it on, it's really useful to go back and find which parts of the book resonated with me if I'm trying to like make a video about it or just remind myself of the book or that kind of thing. It's really interesting and useful. And sometimes when I reread the book, I'll use a different colour pen and then I'll underline the stuff that resonates with me the second time I read the book. And sometimes that's quite different to the first time, and that is always interesting, especially if a lot of time has passed and you feel like you're different as a person. Fascinating data, we love it. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I will leave the original, if I can find the original person who started the reading habits tag, I'll link it below. I'm pretty sure I can find it, but it's kind of like a well-known Booktube tag, and I'd love to hear some of your answers to those things in the comments. And I hope you're having a very cozy December and getting loads of reading done. I don't know what that was.